I got a surprising phone call from Julian, like asking if I still had my studio. And this was only like 3 months after we'd recorded the demo. I said, of course I got that studio. And he said, well, we want to record with you, and he told me, but we don't even think you can get that sound. We think it was kind of an accident. And we just want you to know that we don't know if you can get that sound we liked again.
So what was your response to that?
I knew damn well that I could get that sound. And my response was like, you're kidding me. You're coming back. I get a shot at this. Oh my God. I jumping up and down with excitement. It was one of the best moments of my life for sure.
Well, sonically, is this it? It sounds so different from everything kind of in that era. Cause you think of the big bands at that time, or just all the pop artists at that time. Like that was really when Eminem was huge. That was
Yeah,
when Creed was huge. And it is 180, 100% different from that. How
right.
deliberate was it that you guys were trying to be different from everything else?
I, as a producer who comes from being a musician, my first question in the studio to a group that's sitting in front of me is, okay, what would you like to do here? What's your idea? It's not like, okay, you came into my system, you plug it into the Gordon Raphael method and I do my thing. It's like, what do you want to do? I want to find out. And the first thing they said, I think Fab said it, it was like, hey man, you know what everybody's doing? We want to do whatever they're doing is not what we want to do. We want to do the other thing. And that was a pretty easy one for me because Pro Tools was rather new. And therefore, everybody wanted to take advantage of the new thing that you could do 64 tracks of audio on every song. So everybody in 1998 and 2000 were using Bob Clear Mountain sample packs for the kick drum, and they were using 808 samples under that, under the real kick drum, four different tambourines, walls of backup vocals, big, big, big. So I thought, ha ha ha, how funny would it be to just go out and play your songs with 8 microphones and then that'll be the sound. So we had like literally 8 audio tracks, and then we added one for singing. And that was, compared to 64 tracks of everybody else, it was a revolutionary different thing.
So was that done on Pro Tools or was it done on tape?
It was done with something called eMagic Logic, which was our software, and it was talking to Pro Tools hardware and plugins inside this new computer that had just come out called G4. Okay. So we had this hybrid. And the reason we were using eMagic Logic and not Pro Tools is because as an electronic musician myself playing synthesizers, eMagic could do MIDI and audio at the same time, like a decade before any of the other softwares were figuring out how to do it. So it was just completely cool that we had this German software that, of course, they later sold to Apple. And we had German software we were recording on, and then the Pro Tools engine for converting and capturing.
And were you kind of mixing as you go while you guys were doing the album, or how did that work?
I always mix as I go so that everybody knows what they're getting, but the strokes were extremely detail oriented. So even though at the end of the day, the song sounded killer cool and pretty damn mixed, they would have 3 or 4 days of ideas to try on every song. Like, raise this up. Now on the G, my bass is slightly quieter than when I play the F sharp. Make every G louder so that it matches the F sharp. Like there was a lot of mixing done after the recording, even though I had pretty well mixed the recording.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because it's like when you listen to the album, the way they compose their songs, it's very counterpoint heavy. It's almost like a piece
Right
of
on.
classical music,
Yes.
because there's Nick's part and then there is Albert's part, then there's the bass part, then there's the vocal melody, and of course the drums underneath all of that. So everything
Right.
kind of interacts in a really beautiful way on that
Mhm.
record. So like when you're trying to capture something like that, were they wanting to do like one take and get raw authenticity, or were they like, we have to have it perfect? Because it sounds
They
very
wanted
precise.
they wanted raw authenticity, and they were willing to work and sweat and bleed as hard as they needed to play the song until it was perfect. It's not micro edited. It's not like super chopped up. There's a few little movements on some songs that are chops, but most of it is actually played that way and then mixed so that in case one hi-hat was a little quieter than the other, we could make it even, and also so that each part of those counterpoint melodies could be heard clearly without drowning out the other one.
Well, it's very symphonic. Like that's when I think
Yeah.
of the first record, that's what I think of. Just
Yeah.
like I was mentioning, because of the way, especially the way that the guitars are, like the way that
Yeah.
Nick and Albert play together, it's a sound, and I feel like even 20, 25 years on, that's still a sound that people go for today when they're like, well, we want to sound like the Strokes. Um,
Right.
Listening to that record, you kind of mentioned it towards the beginning of the conversation, like the drums on Hard to Explain. Like, how did you get that mechanicalized industrial sound?
All through the 90s when people in my town were listening to our, grunge rock stuff, Mudhoney, Alice in Chains. I liked those bands too, but my heart was with Skinny Puppy in Vancouver, Canada. And they were an
Industrial.
industrial electronic band with synthesizers and drum machines. And so I had so much experience working with 808s, 909, DMX drum machine. I owned them. I used them on all my songs in the 90s. So that when they told me that they had written a song on a drum machine and they wished that they could use Fab playing the drums, but somehow have the sound of the drum machine, it was like no problem for me to, I could do that. I could use EQ and gates and make it sound really mechanical and wrong, really artificial, even though it's really drums. I could hype it in such a way that it sounds like a machine is being played.
One of the things that I think is that always sticks out to me on that record is the sound of Julian's vocals. How did you get
Yeah.
that sound?
Um, Audio Technica 4033A, cheap $400 condenser mic, which was like one of our best mics at the studio, and Avalon 737 SP tube preamp, which has its own built-in EQ and compressor. And that's all you're hearing. There's no plugins, no reverb, no nothing. Just a guy singing into a microphone through a preamp strip, and that's it. Done.
Interesting, because I feel like a lot when I see people talking about his vocal chain for that album, they bring up like the sound of a PV practice amp.
Right?
So that's incorrect then from what people are
It's
saying.
it's highly apocryphal because the very first idea I had when they wanted to do it in this new way was I had a PV keyboard amp in my studio, and Julian did the very first take of the modern age on the EP version with this live with the band through this PV practice amp. And after one take, he said, "Nah, I can't hear myself well enough, and I want to do it afterwards." And as a matter of fact, I think two notes from that original take wound up mixed into the other ones on the EP version of the modern age. So there is a micro kernel, a corn-sized kernel of truth to the PV, but it only lasted one take. And then all the other weeks of recording I did with them, it was through this Avalon and condenser mic.